Muhammad Ali thought he'd heard every question imaginable. Reporters had grilled him about Vietnam, his religion, his fights, his future. Fans had asked for autographs, advice, and predictions. But on October 12, 1982, an 8-year-old girl with leukemia asked him something that shattered him completely. The question was so simple, so innocent, that it broke the most confident man in America on live television. What happened next remained a secret for over 3 decades until a cemetery groundskeeper finally revealed the truth that would change how the world saw Muhammad Ali forever. This isn't just another Ali story. This is about the moment when the greatest fighter who ever lived discovered that some battles can't be won with fists, and sometimes the smallest voices ask the biggest questions. It was a Tuesday morning in Chicago, and Muhammad Ali was doing what he'd done hundreds of times before, a routine television interview. At 40 years old, he'd been retired from boxing for just over a year. The Parkinson's disease that would eventually claim his speech was already beginning to show, though he hadn't been officially diagnosed. His hands had a slight tremor. His voice was softer than it used to be, but he was still Muhammad Ali, still charming, still magnetic. The morning show was broadcast live to 3 million viewers across the country. The host, Barbara Reynolds, was experienced at keeping celebrity interviews light and entertaining. Ali had been booked to talk about his retirement, maybe do a few magic tricks, tell some stories from his legendary career. Everything was going according to plan. They'd been chatting for about 15 minutes when something unexpected happened. A producer rushed onto the set during a commercial break, whispering urgently to Barbara and handing her a slip of paper. She read it, her expression changing from confusion to concern. "Muhammad," she said as they came back on air, "we have a very special phone call. A little girl has been trying to reach you for weeks. Her name is Sarah. She's calling from Children's Hospital in Boston." Ali's entire demeanor shifted instantly. The playful confidence vanished. He sat up straighter, suddenly serious. "Put her through," he said without hesitation. The phone line crackled through the studio speakers, and then came a voice so small and weak it silenced the entire studio audience. "Mr. Ali, is that really you?" "Yes, sweetheart. This is Muhammad Ali. What's your name?" Sarah Matthews. "I'm 8 years old and I have leukemia." The words hit the studio like a physical force. The audience went completely silent. Barbara Reynolds looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Even the camera operators stopped moving. "Sarah," Ali said, his voice immediately gentler than anyone had heard it in years. "Thank you for calling me. You're very brave. I watch your fights on TV with my daddy. You're my favorite boxer. You always win." Ali's eyes were already starting to glisten. "Not always, honey. I lost some fights too. But you never gave up. That's what Daddy says. He says you're the greatest because you never give up." "Your daddy sounds like a smart man." There was a pause on the phone. They could hear Sarah taking labored breaths. The effort of this conversation was clearly exhausting her, but she pressed on with the determination that only children possess when something really matters to them. "Mr. Ali," she said finally, "I have a question for you." "Anything, sweetheart. You ask me anything you want." Another pause, longer this time, in her hospital room hundreds of miles away. Sarah was gathering every ounce of courage an 8-year-old could muster to ask the question that had been keeping her awake at night. The question that scared her more than the cancer, more than the treatments, more than anything else in her young life. "Mr. Ali," she said, her voice cracking with emotion, "when you die, will you remember me in heaven?" The question hit Muhammad Ali like a knockout punch he never saw coming. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes filled with tears that immediately spilled down his cheeks. His hands, already trembling slightly from the early stages of Parkinson's, began to shake harder. The most eloquent man in sports, the man who could always find the perfect words for any situation, was rendered speechless by the innocent inquiry of a dying child. Barbara Reynolds covered her mouth with her hand. Several people in the studio audience started crying. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of Ali's breakdown. 3 million viewers across America watched as their hero crumbled. Ali tried to speak. "Sarah, but his voice broke completely. He tried again, "Sweetheart, but he couldn't finish. The tears were coming too fast. The emotion was too overwhelming. Muhammad Ali, who had faced down Sonny Liston and George Foreman, who had stood up to the United States government, who had never backed down from anything in his life, Couldn't answer an 8-year-old girl's question about mortality and memory. He covered his face with his massive hands and sobbed. The sound of it, this giant of a man weeping on national television, was heartbreaking. The director quickly cut to commercial, but the damage was done. The last thing 3 million people saw was Muhammad Ali crying so hard his shoulders were shaking. During the commercial break, Barbara Reynolds knelt beside Ali's chair. "Muhammad, we can end the interview here if you need to." "No," Ali said, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Get her back on the line. I need to talk to her. I need to answer her question." When they returned from commercial, Ali had composed himself somewhat, though his eyes were still red and his voice was thick with emotion. "Sarah, are you still there?" "Yes, Ali." She sounded worried now. "Did I make you sad?" "No, baby. You didn't make me sad. You made me think about something very important. Can I tell you something?" "Okay." Ali took a deep breath, gathering strength from somewhere deep inside. "Sarah, when I get to heaven, and I hope that's a very long time from now, you know what I'm going to do first." "What?" "I'm gonna look for you. And when I find you, you know what we're gonna do?" "What?" "We're gonna float like butterflies, both of us together. No more pain, no more being sick, no more hospitals. Just floating like butterflies in the most beautiful place you've ever seen. How does that sound?" On the phone, Sarah was crying now too, but she managed to say, "That sounds really nice, Mr. Ali." "And Sarah," Ali continued, his voice growing stronger with each word, "I want you to promise me something. Can you do that for me?" "Yes. Promise me you'll fight. You'll fight this cancer the same way I fought in the ring. You be brave, you be strong, and you never ever give up. Can you promise me that?" "I promise, Mr. Ali, and I promise you," Ali said, and now his voice was clear and strong, "that I will never forget you. Not in this life and not in the next one. You are Sarah Matthews, and Muhammad Ali knows your name. That means something special. That means you matter. That means you're a champion too." The interview ended shortly after that. The studio audience gave Ali a standing ovation, but it was different from the usual applause he received. This wasn't celebration. This was recognition of something profound they'd just witnessed. After the show, Ali asked for Sarah's hospital information. 3 days later, without telling anyone, not his management, not the press, not even his wife, Muhammad Ali walked into Children's Hospital in Boston. This wasn't a publicity stunt. This was personal. He found Sarah's room on the pediatric oncology ward. When he walked through the door, her parents broke down crying. Sarah was asleep, her head bald from chemotherapy, her skin pale and thin. She looked even younger than 8 years old. Ali sat in the chair beside her bed and waited. He didn't wake her. He just sat there, this enormous man folded into a small hospital chair, watching a dying little girl sleep. After about an hour, Sarah opened her eyes, saw Ali and gasped. "You came," she whispered. "I promised I wouldn't forget you." Muhammad Ali keeps his promises. For the next 2 hours, Ali stayed with Sarah. He did magic tricks that made her laugh, something her parents said she hadn't done in weeks. He told her stories about his fights, his travels, his life. He let her hold his Olympic gold medal, which he'd brought specifically for her to see. When it was time to leave, Ali knelt beside Sarah's bed and took her small hand in his large one. "Sarah, you're going to get better. I believe that with all my heart. But if you don't, if heaven gets you before it gets me, you save me a good spot, okay? And when I get there, we'll float like butterflies, just like I promised." Sarah smiled, the biggest smile her parents had seen from her in months. "I'll save you the very best spot, Mr. Ali kissed her forehead and left. In the hallway, he broke down crying again, this time with no cameras, no audience, just Sarah's parents holding him while he wept for their daughter. Sarah Matthews died on November 3, 1982, just 22 days after that phone call that broke Muhammad Ali's heart on live television. Her parents didn't call Ali immediately. They were drowning in their own grief, making funeral arrangements, trying to figure out how to continue living without their little girl. When they finally reached him 2 weeks later, Ali was silent for a long time after they told him the news. "Where is she buried?" he finally asked. "Oak Hill Cemetery in Newton, Massachusetts," her father said. What Sarah's parents didn't know, what nobody knew for 15 years, was that Muhammad Ali began visiting Sarah's grave, not once or twice as a gesture, but regularly, compulsively, like a man carrying out a sacred duty. Whenever Ali was anywhere near Boston for business, for appearances, for any reason at all, he would drive to Oak Hill Cemetery, find Sarah's small grave, and sit there for hours. He'd talk to her about his life, about his struggles with Parkinson's disease, about his children, about his fights. He'd tell her jokes and apologize over and over for not being able to save her, even though there was nothing he could have done. Ali kept these visits completely secret. He'd go alone, often at dawn or dusk when few people were around. He wore baseball caps and sunglasses to avoid recognition. He never told his family, never told his friends, never told anyone. This was between him and Sarah. Over 15 years, Ali visited Sarah's grave at least 30 times. He brought flowers every visit, always butterflies if he could find them. He left small gifts, a butterfly pin, a miniature boxing glove, photographs of himself with, "To Sarah, the real champion," written on the back. The only person who noticed was Robert Chen, the groundskeeper at Oak Hill Cemetery. Chen had worked there for over 20 years, and he knew the patterns of grief. Most people visited frequently right after a burial, then less and less over time. But this mysterious visitor was different. He came year after year, decade after decade, always alone, always emotional. Chen didn't know who the visitor was until one windy day in 1997 when the man's sunglasses blew off. Chen recognized Muhammad Ali immediately but said nothing. He watched from a respectful distance as Ali sat by the grave, speaking softly to the headstone, sometimes crying. Chen kept Ali's secret for nearly 20 years, only revealing it after Ali's death in 2016. He loved that little girl like she was his own daughter. Chen told reporters. You could see it in the way he'd sit there, in the way he'd carefully arrange the flowers. Sometimes he'd bring a live butterfly in a jar and release it at her grave, saying, "There you go, Sarah. Float like a butterfly." It was the most tender thing I ever witnessed. In 1997, 15 years after Sarah's death, Ali made what would be his final visit to her grave. His Parkinson's had progressed significantly by then. He could barely walk without assistance and could barely speak, but he made the trip anyway. This time, he brought something different, a letter he'd written to Sarah. His handwriting was shaky and barely legible, but the message was crystal clear. Sarah, the letter read, I kept my promise. I never forgot you. Every time I see a butterfly, I think of you. Every time I hear a little girl laugh, I remember your laugh. You asked me if I'd remember you in heaven. The answer is yes. I'll remember you in heaven because I've remembered you every single day since you left. You were braver than any fighter I ever faced. You were stronger than any champion I ever knew. I love you, Sarah. I'll see you soon. We'll float like butterflies. Muhammad Ali, he left the letter in a waterproof container at her grave, weighted down with a stone. When Muhammad Ali died on June 3, 2016, Sarah's parents, now elderly, attended his funeral in Louisville. They brought with them every item Ali had left at their daughter's grave over the years, the butterfly pins, the boxing glove, the photographs, the letter. At a private gathering after the funeral, Sarah's mother shared their story publicly for the first time. My daughter asked Muhammad Ali if he would remember her in heaven. She told the assembled mourners, and he proved that he would. He remembered her every day for 34 years. He never forgot his promise to an 8-year-old girl he spoke to for 10 minutes on the phone. Today, Sarah Matthews' grave has a small plaque that wasn't there before. It reads, Sarah Matthews, 1974-1982, champion, friend of Muhammad Ali, float like a butterfly. The plaque was paid for anonymously, but Robert Chen knows who arranged it. On the day Ali died, Chen found an envelope at Sarah's grave containing cash and a note for Sarah's marker from her friend who never forgot, M.A. The story of Muhammad Ali and Sarah Matthews reminds us that true greatness isn't measured in championships or fame. It's measured in promises kept, in tears shed for others' pain, in secret acts of love that nobody sees. An 8-year-old girl asked Muhammad Ali a question that haunted him for 34 years because it forced him to confront his own mortality and the universal human fear of being forgotten. But in answering her question, in keeping his promise to remember her, Ali proved something beautiful about the human spirit. Some promises are worth keeping for a lifetime. Some people, no matter how briefly they touch our lives, leave marks on our hearts that never fade, and sometimes the greatest victories happen not in boxing rings, but in hospital rooms and cemeteries, where love conquers everything, even death. Sarah Matthews lived only 8 years, but because of a 10-minute phone call and a man who kept his promise, her story will be told forever. She mattered. She's remembered. And somewhere, maybe Muhammad Ali and Sarah Matthews are floating like butterflies together, just like he promised they would.